Alright, so now that we have a narrow thesis statement that's focused and ready to take us into our essay, it's time to start planning that essay by writing an outline. So this is the outline sheet that's available for you in the Writing Essays folder in Moodle. I've opened it up here and I'm ready. I've got my thesis statement down. I'm ready to find my main points and kind of flesh out those main points that will turn into paragraphs. So each main point is a paragraph. And it's important to remember that this is all about depth and unique angles and finding a new and fresh way to argue a topic. So make sure that you're not just throwing down the first main points that you think of. Usually, if they come right off the top of your head, they come right off the top of everybody else's too, and you're not telling anyone anything new. So you want to make sure that you're thinking of some new or unique or just at least not well-known points that you can build into the body of your essay. So I've been thinking about this for this one, and it's really important to remember that I'm talking about should be required to take ag classes, and the key word in the reasoning is understand. The point is, I want students to be able to understand how they get their food. How does the U.S. supply food to 300 million people? It's important to think at this point, what are you arguing or discussing or persuading about? I'm discussing why. So what will they learn from these ag classes about how the U.S. supplies food to its people? I'm not worried at this point about how to implement the curriculum or how to teach these things or how ag classes should disseminate this information. I'm just talking about why. Why is it a good idea for them to take ag classes? What will they learn about how the U.S. supplies food to its people? So keeping that in mind, I was thinking about if you're into ag or if you've ever kind of taken a look into how the U.S. supplies food, there's this thing called a farm-to-table pipeline. It's how goods get from farms to supermarkets to people's tables. This is something that people don't know a whole lot about. Agriculture is an industry that has huge infrastructure just like anything else. So thinking again, so let's tell students about farm-to-table pipeline. And what about that will help them? What will they understand about the U.S. food supply? Well, maybe one of my supporting subpoints is going to be the benefits of the farm-to-table pipeline. Things like a variety of goods all year. For example, there are strawberries in our supermarkets from California all year round because they grow there all year round and they're shipped across the country. So maybe we talk about the benefits. Maybe another thing we talk about is the challenges. So something like the CO2 or the greenhouse gases released during transport. So even if someone is eating organic avocados from California, if they're coming from California to Illinois, there's still an impact. So maybe for that one, we just want to stick with benefits and challenges. We've got some kind of subpoints, examples, details. So that'd be farm-to-table pipeline. My next one, maybe we're talking about teaching them about growing seasons. So not only do we have this farm-to-table pipeline that goods and services go back and forth all the way across the country, some students don't even know about growing seasons. And why might they need to know that in terms of the U.S. and its food supply? Well, where do things come from? Maybe we need to talk about well, we've already used strawberries and avocados, but what about even things like coffee? Where does that come from? How does it get to our table? It's a staple in our diet, but where does it come from? Maybe something like when things grow. Do people know that apples from the Northwest grow in the fall, and that a lot of our apples in the whole country come from Washington and this one growing season in the fall? And maybe these things, we need to know that, so students can start to get the idea of how challenging it can be to feed people all year round. They can't just rely on their local stuff. So then maybe a third point might be teaching students about food supplies as it pertains to consumer goods and pricing. Whoops. So maybe buying local versus something grown nationally versus something grown internationally. So something local would be like a farmer's market, and that's good, but it's seasonal. So right now we're having a great farmer's market season, but in a month or two all of that will be gone. But buying national or international, you can get it all year round. But there's maybe extra cost. So those strawberries that come from California in February are really cheap, but in October are pretty pricey. Maybe we also want to talk about being an informed consumer. Maybe this is something that ag classes can teach us, particularly if we're talking about the U.S. food supply. So things like sustainability, cost effectiveness, maybe even what's the difference between something that's organic versus something that's not. You need to be able to be informed about your food choices and all of that. And ultimately, this will help students how to know how to choose wisely for themselves, their own budgets, but also for the whole nation and the whole planet. Something like eco-friendly growing. So once I've got those in place, I would flesh them out even more. Like, look at this one's not very fleshed out. It needs to have some more stuff. We've only got a few minutes here, so fleshing it out, that would take some time. But now that I've got this together, I have a basic outline. But I'm noticing that maybe some of these points aren't in the right order. It seems like maybe my first main point, I might want to take that and make that my middle main point. It seems like it's more logical to talk about growing seasons, then talk about farm-to-table pipeline, and then talk about consumer goods and pricing. Because the growing seasons, that's something that people are going to be more familiar with. Then the other two, it seems like we're going in order of things that people know least about. So probably more persuasive to start with growing seasons and end with those consumer goods and prices. So this is just an example of how to put together an outline. Your outline should be roughly this detailed, should have even more stuff in it. It should take you longer than 9 minutes to do, so that you can really make sure that you're putting together a logical, cohesive argument or discussion that's really actually persuasive and is doing the purpose that you set forth in your thesis statement. As always, if you have questions, let me know. Otherwise, keep on keeping on with Essay 1.